Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden, broadcasting to you live from Ottawa. And I've got a great show for you today. I really am proud of this interview with Kayla Pollock, who is one of the chief spokespeople about the failure of the vaccine injury program that has failed thousands. We don't know how many, but at least thousands of Canadians who have been injured by vaccines. And of course, we're talking primarily about the COVID vaccine. And we've talked to Kayla before, but this interview is riveting. That's all I can say. It's incredible what she's had to go through. So I'm going to put that on. Talked to Kayla yesterday afternoon. Have recorded it for today's broadcast. We've got some more things to say after we go through that. But before I did, I wanted to say, please read my latest column. It's more of a column than or more of an analysis piece in Blaze Media on Mark Carney's ulterior motives right now, what he's up to. And I think it's absolutely outrageous what he's doing here. But I'm gonna make sure we still have this video file on here. Here we go. Anyway, so without further ado, and I've got some things to say at the end here, including my comments on Pierre Poilievre's by-election, where once again we've got election interference with 108 different candidates. This is BS, and I'll call it out for what it is. But when we'll come back to that after this interview with Kayla Pollock. I want to get right to this. Thanks for joining me again on Stand on Guard. This is your host, David Crayden, and I'm joined today by Kayla Pollock, who, of course, you might know has had a lot to do with criticism of the Vaccine Injury Support Program, which, of course, is a complete misnomer because the VISP, if you want to call it by its acronym, is not supporting anybody. And literally, we learned this week that if you go to the website to find out what kind of assistance has been lent out to anybody, all you see is redaction after redaction after redaction. And it's probably because Global News recently did a 3-part expose on this program after a lot of us had already been talking about it for quite some time. But sometimes it takes the mainstream media to make an issue pertinent to the government. And I think, and Kayla's hard work in promoting this has been incredible. And I just wanted to highlight this post earlier this week from Dan Mazier, and it says the Liberals are blocking the Health Committee from investigating their vaccine injury support program, despite damning reports of mismanagement. The vaccine injury support program is a $50 million a year Liberal disaster. Yeah, another one. Thousands of Canadians are left waiting years for help while millions of tax dollars pad the pockets of a consultant with no apparent health expertise and also is apparently very linked to the Liberal Party. That's me talking, not Dan. Why is more money going to consultants than injured Canadians? Well, because you're dealing with the Liberal government. That's probably what this is all about. So welcome, Kayla, to the show. And I just want to open up by saying, what was your reaction when you first saw some of these reports from Global News? Did you think, at last, the mainstream media is reporting on this, not problem, this crisis for people like yourself?
I was actually really skeptical about it, only because I had talked about this months and months and months and months ago. I had posted things, and this was not new information at all. It had been already reported in, independent news sources. So I was a little skeptical, but I guess I felt like better late than never, and that there were people, on the liberal side of things, or some of the older people that I knew that watched TV, or that just didn't believe things that were going on, and unfortunately that they do believe mainstream media. So I felt like we should all cooperate, and that's why I volunteered to be one of the 4 people that sort of highlighted the issue, because it's certainly been an issue for me and other Canadians, and I've been speaking out about this. I've made that my mission. I got to sit in a chair all day anyway, so because of this, so I might as well be helping other people. And so it wasn't, none of this was shocking or surprising at all.
Well, when I covered the global news reports, I guess a week or so ago, I wasn't sure what the reaction would be from YouTube specifically, because for quite some time,
Mm,
every time we talk about the vaccine, I have to have to say,
yeah.
well, of course we know it's safe and effective, right?
Yeah, and so did they.
And
I mean, they had to, this is so rare. They had to say rare, rare, rare. But and of course they don't report on how many people are trying to, um, I guess you would say, get in line that haven't already been processed. So, you might have a figure of, let's say, 3 to 4,000 people, but how many of those people haven't actually even, how many people are behind those people that haven't even gotten their claims even, given a number? I mean, it's been 3 years for me, and I'm still in the intake phase, and I'm, you know, sitting here quadriplegic with doctor's notes and charts saying it's from your Moderna vaccine. It's a side effect called transverse myelitis, which basically eats away at your spinal cord. And I'm quadriplegic for the rest of my life, meaning can't move from the chest down, have impairment in my arms and things like that, no bladder or bowel function. I'm literally dependent on somebody to get me in and out of bed, to get me in and out of a chair. I also have a 10-year-old son, as you know, and I keep doing this because of him. But um yeah, I think that my purpose is to shout this stuff from the rooftops. I never asked to be involved in political matters or bureaucracy, but it seems that that's the direction I've been placed in. So it's disgusting. It's That's, I don't know what else to say. But it's not surprising. I'm just
no,
shocked that this was voted back in. Like, that we as Canadians were so sick of our government, and everybody was complaining so much, but then, we're back sort of where we started. Um, we said we'd had 8 years of hell and that we weren't going to do it again. And here we are. So what are people going to expect? You know, I know
yeah.
people that voted in Mark Carney because they said that, he had a financial background and they thought that would help Canada. But, I don't think they looked into the rest of it. But, I believe there was actually something like $72 million actually put into the vaccine injury compensation program, but 96% of the funds went to, um we don't know. Like, I posted one of the first statements where I was able to get, under the Freedom of Information Act, what they spent the money on, and it's just redacted, redacted, redacted. So really, we have no idea where the money went. But there's ties to the Liberals. There always has been. They've started disappearing online. So, when you see something online, you really have to, first of all, figure out whether it's AI or what you're even looking at. But you also have to kind of, I've learned, you have to record it at the time, because things disappear. Even my medical charts, things disappear. Like, you have to print and have and save, and it's just, all of us have gone through this, because our medical charts start disappearing when when we're in our the vaccine injury compensation program, and just things start going, really odd. I mean, they literally hired a bunch of high school students in most part. And I mean, I think one of the most disgusting things for, I know myself, is thinking like I'm sitting here fighting for my life with a known vaccine injury. The government of Canada, I'm not speaking about the US or the UK or any other country, the government of Canada said, if you take this safe and effective vaccine, if you know there's a rare side effect, we will cover you. And that's why this program was created. Other countries, other provinces, even Quebec has a vaccine injury compensation program for other vaccines. This was created only for the COVID vaccine, but they promise, like, if you get a rare, and I say rare as a sarcasm, a rare side effect, we will cover you. Meaning not just like, I don't mean just like cover you. I mean they owe, like, a couple $100,000, plus they're supposed to be paying for rehab. And they're like, you're people aren't realizing that it's not just your life that you lost. I lost my job, I lost my house, I lost even my dog, because I had a Great Dane at the time, and personal support workers said, "Oh, the dog's too big, so we won't come in." I lost my neighborhood, and I lost my son, not because of custody or anything, but because his dad and I, and did all I every other weekend and summers and stuff. So that is not that is not ideal at all. And I used to work at a school. So I lost my whole life. I lost my body. Um and I can't even get the type of help that I need. So instead of, vaccine injury compensation program helping me, I ended up, going back to the hospital and saying, like, I don't have any help. And so they offered me medical assistance in dying. um this is the Canada that we live in. And you know of course I have proof of all this stuff. I mean, there's too many haters and trolls on the internet to not have proof of all this stuff. And I mean, that's why I ended up filing a $45 sorry, for $45 $45 million lawsuit against Moderna, which is now in the disclosure phase. So I think they have 5 days left to disclose everything. So, I'll see what happens there. But it hasn't been dropped. It's still going through the courts. Canada, it has it so that um they are not exempt from liability. What they do is, unfortunately for taxpayers, they've made it so that, if I sue Moderna and win, which, that's the plan, the government turns around and pays Moderna back. And you know where the government gets their money? They get it from us.
Yes,
So
exactly.
ultimately the vaccine company, basically they just don't want this because of their name. They don't want their name going down. But as far as money, I mean, that's pocket change to them anyway. But they just, it's, unfortunately, it's on Canadians again. And this program, I mean, all this money, people just assume when they see me and they hear my story that the government is helping. But the government is literally offering to euthanize me legally because we don't have health care
Well,
that's
that's
adequate.
that's that's really one of the questions I wanted to pose to you. Like, how many times did they offer May to you?
Three
Once or
times.
twice?
Three
Three
times.
times.
Yeah.
I mean, that is absolutely astounding. That, and I've written extensively about MAID in Canada, and
Yeah.
how this is a scourge. It is, to me, anti-life. It's a culture of death that we have in this country now. We celebrate dying, we celebrate death through this program. They keep wanting to expand it now to the mentally ill,
Yeah.
addicts, anybody that they consider dispensable. And I think that's
I
really how
I
they
think
view,
that's
you know.
scary because, when I was a younger teenager, I went through a period where my mental health wasn't stable, and I would have, gladly signed up for MAID at that time. And it took a lot of work and a lot of therapy to get to the point where I was, okay. And then of course this happened. But I think about my son and I think, well, what happens if he has some sort of mental health issue, which many, 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 many people do nowadays. What if he develops some sort of mental health issue when he's a teenager and he or whatever, or a young adult? Let's say he's even 18 and he says, "You know what? Life's just not worth living. I'm going to sign up for MAID." What, like, is that the message that that me as a mother wants to send to my child? No. So I'm going to fight this because that's just, we have to leave the world, like, we're not really fighting for now. Unfortunately, like, these changes are probably not going to help me, but they will eventually hopefully help, our children and our grandchildren. And not that I have grandchildren yet, but our next generation. And that's why I do it. I think there's a quote that says, one of the greatest things you can do in life is to plant a tree which shade you will never ever sit under. And you know I sort of love that because I think that's what I feel like I'm the one that sort of needs to plant that seed so that that tree grows, and that, like, these things are not extended. Like, if you have a terminally ill problem and you are not going to live and you choose MAID, I'm not saying that I'm against that. That's a personal choice, but offering it to just everybody, to me, it sends the message that, especially to people with disabilities or mental health issues, that you're just disposable and no one wants you. And
Yeah,
that
precisely.
is that is like, what is it that they want? Because they're bringing in people from all different countries, and they're euthanizing people with mental health issues, let's say, people that are terminally ill, and people with disabilities. Like, let's say that happens, like, that, well, that's one way to get rid of a lot of money going to healthcare. I mean,
Yeah.
is
Well,
that, you know
how did that make you feel when they offered you medical assistance in dying instead of assistance? How did you feel when
the
you went
first
through
time
that?
that I heard it, I was like, wow, there's an option here. So I willingly emailed them back and inquired, and then when they told me that within 90 days, I might have, like, I would have to go through with it within that 90-day period after applying. I was like, I am not ready to say goodbye to my son in 90 days. I believe at
Wow,
the time I was 37 and he was he would have been 7. And
incredible.
I was just like, okay, whoa, like, no. And then I realized, like, what was going on, and that that was a treatment option, not treatment, but it was basically like, you're too expensive, we don't have the care for you, here, take this. And I did not ask about it. It was unsolicited. Here's an option for you. It's a good option if you're in a case like yours where you don't have the support and you don't have the family support. Like, it was basically glorified, and I went for it at first. Like, I was like, "Oh, wow." And then when I realized, like, what I was getting into and that this was not reversible, that's when I started to really think, "Okay, you need to speak up."
So this is a Friday afternoon, and the consultants who have been given the file for this so-called assistance program, this is usually called Drinking Fridays for these folks.
Right.
And I don't know how much of the day they spend drinking, but I'm sure within a couple of hours they'll be blitzed, and they're
Well,
playing
that
they're
was
playing ping
awful.
pong. Well,
Yeah, I think that was the most almost, I think one of the most insulting things was like, you know, that you're sitting here and you're slowly basically, you know, dying, and you don't have the resources to financially, you know, adapt your house or to make the change. Like, even like a wheelchair accessible vehicle is considered a luxury vehicle in Canada because of the price, and you pay luxury taxes on it, and nobody thinks a van is, you know, that wheelchair accessible is luxury. But that's just, that's what happens. It's more expensive for everything. And so when I heard the ex-employee saying that, you know, there was Netflix, that there was ping pongs, that there was drinking Fridays, and that there was slushy machines. You know, I had a few thoughts. Not only was that disgusting, I'm thinking, wow, is the government paying for that liquor, or is it bring your own booze? I mean, are they putting it in their slushies? There's also photos. If you look at their website, they offer to hire you, that you can bring your dog to work on Fridays. And I was just thinking, you know, I don't have any money. I'm in a bad situation. Why don't I apply for a job there? Because that sounds like an excellent job for someone like me. You don't have to do any work, and you can just sit there and bring your dog to work and drink and play. I think I could probably play ping pong, you know? Like, that's what I'm like, do I just like apply for a job and see what happens?
Yeah. That's
Maybe
it.
you should too. I mean, how could you not feel anything for the people that you're ignoring? But I mean, if you're in high school, that, and you're right out of school or whatever, you wouldn't know. These people were not people that were, they had no idea what they were doing, and that was admittedly so. They, you know, Global did have multiple sources inside saying, like, you know, there's no like, you know, files are just, you know, being tossed around. And the other thing they said is that people were just like numbers. Like, there was no connection to the actual person, so they didn't think of me as someone who really needed help or whatever. They just thought of me as a piece of paper waiting on a desk that they'd get to, you know, whenever or if ever, because, you know, they were too busy drinking, you know, alcohol slushies and playing ping pong and watching Netflix, petting
Well,
their dogs.
it sounds to me like other authoritarian regimes that
Yeah.
reduce people to numbers, so they don't have to
Oh,
think about the
yeah. I mean,
consequences. Yeah,
healthcare
and
is no
get
different.
drunk in the process because that somehow eases their conscience, I suppose. But how can you be that
I
callous and
I
just not care?
That's what I mean. I mean, I'm also obviously kidding about working there, because can you imagine? Like, you're right. Like, I can't even imagine looking at a file and going, "Oh my God, like this person has medical claims to back this up," and then just tossing it down and going, "Yeah, I'd have to drink too." You know, I mean, like, it. I don't know what, I don't know, because I mean, I have a 10-year-old son who has more conscience and more empathy than that, and he can read. So if he saw that, he'd be doing more work. And I think that's partly because of my disability and what he's been around, but that's disgusting. I don't know who's raising these people. I don't know where they came from, but I do know that it's a big problem. And another thing that's disgusting is, like, you know, I live in a small community, and my MPs have been completely silenced. I mean, I had an MP that was supposed to meet with me a year ago and said that he would be there next week. He never showed up, and he just stopped. Like, you know, I had thousands of people contacting him on X, and I mean, they weren't like slandering him or anything like that until the end. Then they started. Then I ended up getting a new address, and I have a new MP. He's young. He's a backbench conservative, but that doesn't mean that, you know, it's his first term. That doesn't mean he can't do anything. And, you know, I got an email, I posted it this morning, saying basically it's like, you know, the type of email that you would get is like a, you know, I'm out of the office kind of reply, and I can auto reply, but it doesn't say I'm out of the office. It says, we got your email and we'll respond soon. Well,
Yeah.
there's been thousands of people contacting my MP on X, and I said, please be kind, because it is, it is his first term. He's one of the youngest people. I believe he might even have the record of being the youngest person. He's a little bit younger even than Pierre Pollier. So I mean, yeah, that doesn't matter though. He's put himself in this position. He says he wants to represent me. At the time, like, there wasn't a lot of vote choice, and I voted him in. He's conservative. And we had a liberal here for years in this area, and the liberal here was voted out. And I mean, it wasn't that the person was bad, but people around here at least were tired of the party. It was very conservative. My street was very conservative. But regardless, he's in, and it's his job to deal with this. And um this is where a conservative can say, look, I have a constituent who is very, like, very sick from this. My story's international. It's not like he doesn't know. It's not like the House of Commons doesn't know. It's not like Mark Carney doesn't know. It's not like Pierre Polyev doesn't know. They all know. So it's just blatantly been ignored. Doug Ford, when he heard my story, he said it was very sad and the feds should be taking care of me, which that's really sick too, because Doug Ford is my provincial, you know, person that is supposed to run these provincial programs. And I'm in Ontario, obviously. And he's the one who's cutting all the funding for these healthcare programs that are supposed to take care of me. So, and sending people like me to long-term care that's so far away from their families that they never see them again. I mean, it's, you can't vote either, like, you can't do anything right in Canada.
Yeah, well, you recently posted this on X, and I'm just wondering if you're entirely serious about this, or
A
if
hundred
you're
percent.
just, yeah. So you say I'm seeking asylum from Canada because I was paralyzed by the COVID shot offered and made 3 times instead of care, abandoned by our health system, and ignored by the people meant to help me survive. So you're entirely serious when you say that.
Yeah, legally you can seek asylum if under certain circumstances, and my circumstance falls well within that. You have to prove that you've been politically ignored. You have to prove that you've been, that people know about your situation, which I've got that in writing, and you've got to you be able to prove a lot of things, but you know what? No one's ever done it, but you know what? There's nothing stopping me from trying. And maybe even trying, people, maybe Global will pick up that story. And I let them know. And there's other countries that would not only take me in, but my caregiver is a heavy duty diesel mechanic, and that's a very sought out job in places that I looked at going. And I do have a son though, and that complicates things. But you know what? By the time this is all said and done, he'd be older, and you know we'll figure it out. His dad and I co-parent quite well, very well, and get along very well. And his wife and I get along very well. So you know what? I'm 100% truthful in saying, like, why would somebody want to stay here when and being offered maid is also, there's regulations that countries have, and that goes against them. So any immigration lawyers or anything that see this and are interested, that's how I got, ended up being able to sue Moderna, is somebody saw my story, and Omar Sheikh saw my story, and decided that he wanted to represent me against Moderna. So, I didn't go looking for a lawyer, but you know what? There's a lot of people that would like to represent me regarding even suing the government for not just offering, but almost pressuring or coercing. Coercion is kind of pressuring you that you're not going to have the services and stuff unless you do this. Well, if you're dead, you're not going to have the services either.
Oh yeah, that's precisely correct. Looking at
Exactly.
pictures of you before the vaccine, you looked like a very physically fit individual. Can you just compare your life then and now in terms of physically? You were obviously an athlete of some caliber. Now you're, as you say, quadriplegic. I mean, what's the difference on a day-to-day basis for you?
I played premier soccer as a goalie, so I was very fit. I was type 1 diabetic, but very well controlled. The day before this happened, we went for it was family day weekend. I went for a big, huge hike, and I didn't fall, nothing like that. That was all ruled out, but went for a big, huge hike. And I woke up in the morning and I couldn't move anything from the neck down, and I couldn't breathe properly. And thankfully, I was an exotic animal trainer, so you'll see a lot of pictures of me with some pretty exotic animals. I worked with lions, I work with monkeys, I work with parrots, I work with large breed dogs. I was on stage with Caesar Milan in 2010. He's the dog whisperer, at the Air Canada Center in front of 19,000 fans. So I had a very active life. And I also worked as a behaviorist, and not just with animals, but I ended up turning that into working at my son's school as well. So I worked as a casual EA at his school, which I worked every day, and worked with kindergarten children, and a lot of them had different disabilities and things like that. And I did a lot of things, and had a very unique life, that I worked really hard to turn around from a really rough start in life. So um, now, I mean, I sit in a wheelchair all day, and people are like, "Oh, you get to sit around all day." It's not like that at all. You try sitting in a chair. My son thought would be fun to be in a wheelchair, so I told him to sit in the chair. And he sat in the chair and he's like, "Now I'm bored." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what it's like." And he's like, "That's not good." And I'm like, imagine just like tape gets, if you think this is funny, or you think I'm grifting, or whatever you want to call it, you want to be a troll, you duct tape your legs and everything. I can feel everything. I can feel pain. If you want to roll over at night, you just roll over. If you want to roll over in the middle of the night, your brain automatically does that. My brain automatically ghost roll over, wakes up and realizes you can't roll over. So waking up paralyzed, I knew immediately that I was quadriplegic. And so because I train service dogs, I got the dog to go and get my um my roommate. He went and just was pacing back and forth, not the roommate, the dog. And he goes, "What's wrong with the dog?" He came up, it was 5 in the morning, and I said, "You need to call 911 and tell them I'm quadriplegic." And they put me on a backboard and did all the right things. I get to the hospital, the doctor takes me off the backboard, takes everything off, and he goes, "Well, this is in your head." And like, almost like he's saying, like when people have like a false pregnancy, they think they're pregnant and they're not. So I was waiting for a psych consult. Meanwhile, I'm screaming in pain and they're giving me morphine. So I've never seen a psych patient get morphine before. So that was a bit odd. And then when I finally got the MRI, it was confirmed that I was indeed quadriplegic. And 3 years later, I still am. It's not reversible. I watch my son, and I used to be very, very, very hands-on mom. I taught him to play hockey. I taught him to play baseball, basketball, all these things. And swimming was a big part of our life. And, now I have to watch him do these things and not participate. And that's hell. Um, there are other things that, I mean, I've become much closer to him in the talking aspect, and things like that, and I can still teach him. Christopher Reeves talks about teaching his son to ride a bike, and Christopher Reeves couldn't move even, his shoulders. So, there's a lot you can teach, but the point is that, you can't even pee. You can't even, have a bowel movement by yourself. Like, you got to think about that. Like, it's not. just the pain and the suffering. It's also what your life was like, what was taken. You can't stop thinking about that. And the only way that I can find purpose in my life and meaning is to make sure that this doesn't happen to other people. And, the financial burden is huge. So I think that's where the vaccine injury compensation program comes back in. I mean, they didn't do their job, but neither did Moderna and neither did these other vaccine companies. So holding them responsible sets an example for my son, and it shows other people that are vaccine injured that they can come out and talk about this. I've had a lot of people that have come out and in the open, and people are now believing us. Only and it's terrible that it has to take a global news story. Where were they years ago? I don't know, but it's taken a global news story for a lot of people to say, "Oh wow, that's real." It's
Yeah. Yeah,
disgusting.
the censorship on this issue has been just
Uh,
incredible. If you can't say you still can't say certain things about it.
oh no.
I got the vaccine twice because I trusted the government. I'm
Right.
ex-military. I
Okay.
really believe I didn't think the government would want to really harm people. I thought they would
Right.
adequately investigate this. And I had at least one friend who said, do some research. I've done some research, and I think there's some real problems here. And I got it nonetheless. I have a lot of buyer remorse about it right now.
I bet.
I'm still healthy, but I'm not sure what the effect's going to be. I think we're still
I
seeing the full
agree.
consequences of this, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse in terms of how people have been affected. And I want to tell you, I am 100% committed to what you're doing, because I got the vaccine, as I said, because I trusted the government and because my mother was in a nursing home. I was working on Parliament Hill. I couldn't work without it. I had to show the proof of my vaccination, and I did it for those reasons. But I'll tell you this: I have lost a sister and a father-in-law just a month or so ago
I'm so
to
sorry.
very suspicious circumstances. Let's put it that way. Perhaps the unintended consequences, and that's how I have to phrase it, of the vaccine. And both of them received it on multiple occasions. And that's heartbreaking, because my sister died of pneumonia, and literally she was gone within 48 hours. It didn't even have a chance to fly out to Vancouver to see her before she died. It was completely unexpected, out of the blue,
So
no
sorry about
respiratory
that.
problems in her life, and suddenly she was gone. So I'm personally very committed to what you're doing and this fight to at least get some semblance of justice. You're never going to get full justice or restitution,
No.
obviously, and you know that. You're not going
No.
to get your health back completely. But it angers me that we have a government that's so callous that they would rather have a bunch of consultants who know nothing about healthcare run this program into the ground, spending money on themselves, on salaries, and nothing on the people they're supposed to be serving. So I hope we see
There
more
were
justice in
also
this country.
there was proof of other people that gave them, optional contracts that had done things like this before. So they chose a program that they knew had no experience in this. They chose a consulting firm. They didn't choose the healthcare or the insurance type people that could process these claims and had experience doing it. And it wasn't because of, this one was cheaper. There were ties to the liberal government. And, like I said, this was spoken about like almost a year ago, I can think of, like by many people. I know Rebel News. I know there were other people from Global News. I know that lost their jobs. I know that this was spoken about years ago. So this none of this is shocking to someone like me. I told Global News, like, yeah, this is what's going on. I'm willing to be a part of your story, but I was really skeptical. Like I said, it's mainstream media. We've just been
Mhm.
screwed over by them so much, and censored is one way. Like, I try to put it on Facebook, and I can't put news on Facebook. So it's Canadian media. So I can't share it on Facebook. So then, and I'm censored on Facebook. So I can share something, but then you can't share what I've shared. So, same with Instagram, even though it's confirmed and I've got, like even if you type my name into, Grok or Chat GPT or whatever, it's going to tell you that I have a confirmed vaccine injury. It's going to tell you that, I'm not faking and all that, whatever you want to say and all that. But um it's disgusting. Even on X, it happens. Like there is nowhere that I can actually tell the truth except for in person because it gets cut out, it gets re-edited, and it gets pieces left out, and it gets censored. Like I think I should just change my name to censored.
Yes, well, a lot of us feel that
Yeah.
way in terms of
Oh, I
ability
bet
to get
you
the truth
do.
out. So, yeah. Well, Kayla, thank you so much for joining me today. And my
Of
thoughts and prayers
course.
are with you and with all other people who have been
Me as
adversely
well.
affected by this. And we'll keep fighting, and you keep fighting, and really support what you're doing. And I'll continue to report on your progress. And
Thank you.
Godspeed, and we'll talk again. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me so much, David.
Okay, bye for now, Kayla.
Thank you.
With Kayla Pollock, who has been suffering from the adverse effects of the vaccine and not getting much restitution or justice. Okay, so we're back today. I was watching the comments today, and I can't believe we're still getting people out there who's saying it's her own damn fault. She got the vaccine. There were millions of Canadians who got the vaccine because the government told them to get it. And they thought the government doesn't want really to hurt us. The government must know something about this, or they got the vaccine because they needed to do so to keep their jobs. So anybody who goes on my site and says, well, it's her own damn fault, I have no time for you at all. And that is absolutely ridiculous. There was no option for a lot of people at that time. You either got that vax or you starved, or you lost your job, or you couldn't do anything. I think the people who refused the vaccine and could do so because of their circumstances, I applaud them. I think that was great. That was courageous. But a lot of people, like myself, believed this couldn't be that bad. And I got the vaccine twice, as I said, because I couldn't visit my mother in a nursing home without having had it. And I couldn't work without it. Kayla got the vaccine because she believed the government was telling her the truth. And look at the consequences. And somebody had the gall to say, how has it affected her life today? Well, she went from being an athlete, as she talked about, being somebody who played soccer and hockey, to somebody who's in a wheelchair, quadriplegic today. Was that not impressive enough for you? Obviously, anybody who comes on my site and says that should be voting liberal, should be saying, Mark Carney's right. These people don't deserve any compensation because, well, they bought into it. And however, is there a disconnect there? Mark Carney encouraged people to get the vaccine. Mark Carney said, get it. Justin Trudeau said, get it. And one of the most incredible comments I saw tonight was, did they get it? Did they really get it? I really wonder. But I'll tell you, very, very closely. Anyway, I want to end with something else here. And if I can, we'll find the video file here. Here we go.
This is the city It's a big one. I'm a cop. It was Monday, October 23rd. We were working the day watch. My partner's Ben Romero. The boss is Captain Carney. My name's Friday.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we've got one more thing to show you here. And I'm sorry we're for doing this the last minute. But, the heat pump scam is
Thompson's
incredible.
North Vancouver home might be cool, but his blood is boiling.
Not stoked about it, that's for sure. Definitely pissed off.
This spring, Thompson contracted Moore and Russell Heating and Air Conditioning to install a heat pump in his house. The $20,000 job was supposed to come with a FortisBC rebate that would cover half the costs. It even said it on the bill.
$10,150 FortisBC rebate qualified. Quote, no hidden costs. It literally says it right there.
But he didn't know the company's certification to provide rebate qualified service was temporarily suspended by the Home Performance Contractor Network, or HPCN. When he applied for the rebate days later, FortisBC denied it.
At first I was shocked because it was a huge company in Metro Vancouver, reputable, and had been on that list. So I was like, well, this must be some sort of mistake.
Moore and Russell's certification was revoked because a new technician hadn't finished a training course. The company's GM says they didn't find out about the suspension until months later.
And HPCN's program manager sent an email to us informing us that our account had been put on pause. But unfortunately, we never received the email, and HPCN doesn't have a process even still to follow up.
But HPCN said emails and follow-up emails about a company's status are standard practice. As many as 200 customers were served by Moore and Russell over that time and subsequently denied rebates totaling about $1.5 million. Thompson says the program as a whole needs to do a better job telling customers which companies are certified.
It's unfair to me from all the promotion from Fortis that, you know, it's straightforward and you're going to get your rebate back and it's anything but. We got stuck in a hole.
Moore and Russell says it's once again in good standing and hopes the rebates will be honored.
Really conclusively shows the problem between what Mark Carney is doing, what he's getting away with. This is what I mean when I say corporate cronyism. He's in government and ensuring contracts are let to companies that are friendly to him or owned by him. And this is why I get back to this again, okay? I get back to this again. Where is Mark Carney right now? Well, I've got an interview on either later today or tomorrow morning. He was at the Bohemian Grove while he was supposedly on vacation in Australia. We have good reason to believe that. And Mark Carney is the most incredible example, the most emblematic example, the very embodiment of corporate cronyism. This is a guy who has put himself, claims to be from the private sector. I'm sorry, the United Nations is not the private sector. The governor of the Bank of Canada is not the private sector. The governor of the Bank of England is not the private sector. These are government jobs. He loves to pretend that, oh, Pierre Poilievre has never had any experience in the private sector. Well, maybe Pierre Poilievre does need some more experience in the private sector, or should have had more before. But I'm sorry, at this point, that's a moot point. Mark Carney has had very little real experience in the private sector. He's been a grifter all of his political and adult life. And that's what Mark Carney's all about. And this is why Mark Carney is a clear and present danger to Canada and Canadians, and it remains so. And I'm going over time here today, but I think this is necessary to get this point across. Because yesterday I had a story on about Universal Ostrich Farm in British Columbia. Very few people watched it comparatively to what my numbers usually are. Because why? It wasn't shared. And I heard people say tonight, hey, just heard about this broadcast 5 minutes ago. Even though I put the announcement out literally 4 hours before the broadcast this morning. So what's going on? This is huge suppression of information. This is huge suppression of the truth. And this is what this liberal government is doing to us. And I know most of you watching today understand that. You know we're losing our freedom of speech. We're losing our freedom of assembly. And we are headed for catastrophe. Now, I have to say this before I sign off tonight. I'll be at the courtroom on July 23rd, which I think is Tuesday, for the sentencing of Tamara Leach and Chris Barber. This will be another seismic day in Canadian history. This will be another seminal day in Canadian history. Because if this judge decides to go after these people in a large way, like the government of Canada, the Carney Trudeau government wants them to, I fear for the future of this country as a place where you can actually have freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. We've almost lost that. And if we silence these two courageous individuals with absolutely outrageous sentencing, we are assigning this nation to hell. And I'll say that again. If we punish these individuals for proclaiming free speech and freedom of assembly, we are assigning this nation into hell. I will be there reporting live at that event, not just for this station, but I'm doing a post-millennial story that day. And I think this is going to be a very historic day in terms of where this country is going. Anyway, thanks for watching today. And I am going to put on the merchandise, because after all of this, I think you can at least watch that. We've got some great merchandise. Please have a look at it. I'm wearing one today. I don't always do this. I have to get back to my tie and jacket and tie, because that's more my style. But once in a while, I don't mind doing the merchandise thing, and I think it's very important. So, thanks for watching, all of you, and especially those people who supported the ostrich show yesterday. Barry, Karen, and Christy, thank you so much for being a part of that show yesterday. It's much appreciated. And we'll be back again tomorrow. I've got a great interview. Can't wait for you to see it. Thanks for watching. God bless this country. God